Jeremiah Carter looked up from his phone, startled. Standing before him was a young black girl, no older than 9, with a denim jacket too big for her shoulders, a fraying backpack clutched tightly to her chest, and eyes that held a comb far too old for her age. The schoolyard at River Edge Elementary had long emptied, save for the rustling leaves of late fall skating across the concrete. His luxury Rolls-Royce stood idle by the curb. An unexpected mechanical hiccup during what was supposed to be a simple site visit to a community center in the Bronx. He blinked. "I'm sorry, what did you say?" The girl repeated, her voice soft but unwavering, "Can I go home with you?" Jeremiah furrowed his brow. "And what's your name?" "Maya." "Maya." "What?" "Maya Johnson?" He let the silence stretch. Her jacket sleeves covered her hands now, her eyes falling to her sneaker, a shoelace broken and tied in a loose knot. From behind him, Warren, his driver of 15 years and a retired Army vet, approached with a subtle look of concern. "Sir, I think she's been left behind," Jeremiah muttered. "Call the school security. This isn't our business." Maya sat on the stone bench under a flickering lamp post. Jeremiah turned back toward the car, but before he could take another step, "Sir," Warren said gently, "don't forget St. Matthew's 1968. You sat on a step like that, hoping someone would show." A gust of wind swept through the yard. Jeremiah froze. He could still see himself, 12 years old, knobby knees, frayed sweater, watching every adult pass him by with empty promises. His throat tightened. Turning slowly, he looked at Maya again. "Do you know your address?" She nodded. 28, Elderberry Street near Emmanuel Church. "My grandma's there." "My mom, she's gone." Jeremiah stared at her for a moment longer, then sighed. "Get in the car." In the back seat, Maya pressed her forehead against the window, watching the city slide past. She flipped through a comic book with wrinkled pages, her lips silently mouthing the dialogue bubbles. Jeremiah eyed her reflection in the rear-view mirror. "You're not scared?" he asked. Maya shook her head. "Bad people don't usually let you look them in the eye." Warren chuckled under his breath. Jeremiah turned away. Children should not know things like that, he thought. They drove through increasingly worn-down streets, cracked sidewalks, chain-link fences, sagging porches. This was not a world Jeremiah frequented. A group of teenagers stared as the Rolls turned the corner. One of them muttering something under his breath. "That's it," Maya pointed, "the greenhouse with the coat hanging on the window." She jumped out before the car fully stopped. Jeremiah followed slowly as if unsure what compelled him to keep moving. An elderly woman sat on a rickety chair by the porch, wrapped in a thin shawl, coughing violently. She looked up as Maya rushed toward her. "Grandma, I'm home. This is the man who brought me back. Daddy didn't show up again." The woman's eyes met Jeremiah's, then drifted past him into the small living room beyond. Her voice rasped. "He's the one from the photo." Jeremiah's gaze followed hers. A faded photograph hung on the wall, framed crooked, sun-bleached. It showed a much younger Jeremiah crouched low, tying the shoelaces of a small black boy during a long-forgotten charity event at the old St. Matthew's orphanage. Jeremiah stepped closer. His breath caught in his chest. "That boy," the grandmother whispered, "was my son, Maya's father. You tied his shoes, gave him a book, told him he mattered. He never forgot. He told Maya about you. Said he met a man once who made him feel seen." Jeremiah looked at Maya, standing now by the doorway, still clutching her comic book, watching him quietly. Her father, that little boy. The dots connected like fate whispering its secret in his ear. Maya smiled. "My mom said that picture was the first time anyone ever knelt for my dad. That's why we kept it." Jeremiah's mouth felt dry. "You need new shoes," he said. Maya shook her head. "I need someone who doesn't leave. And sometimes it only takes a single moment, a pair of broken shoelaces, a forgotten promise, a quiet ride home to remind us that the smallest kindness can echo across generations." If this story touched your heart, we'd love to hear your thoughts.
Share your reflections in the comments below. Give this video a like if it moved you.
And don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories that matter, brought to you by BUP Stories. The words hit him harder than any boardroom insult, any courtroom attack.
They echoed in the hollows he never filled until now.
Back in the car, Jeremiah stared straight ahead.
Warren broke the silence. "Home, sir?" "No," Jeremiah murmured. "Tomorrow we come back." "For what?" Jeremiah didn't blink. "I have a promise to keep." Jeremiah Carter wasn't a man easily shaken.
Yet that night he barely slept. The image of Maya's face framed by flickering porch light stayed with him. More than her voice or her words. It was the calm acceptance in her eyes, the kind of resignation only found in people who had waited too long for someone who never came. He rose before dawn, brewed his coffee black, and stood by the wide window of his Manhattan penthouse, watching the city come alive beneath a dull sky.
His penthouse was silent, pristine, decorated in monochrome.
It had always felt clean. Now, for the first time, it felt sterile.
Warren arrived promptly at 7 a.m. A quiet nod, the only greeting needed between them.
They drove through the city down to the outer boroughs, neither speaking until the skyline gave way to laundry lines and cracked sidewalks. At the corner deli near Elderberry Street, Jeremiah bought a fresh loaf of rye bread, a box of herbal tea, and a new pair of sneakers a size too big, but with bright pink laces. "I don't think she'll need to grow into them," Warren noted.
"She will," Jeremiah replied quietly. "We're not just delivering shoes."
Back at the duplex, the old woman, Miss Thelma, answered the door after a few deep, throaty coughs. She was bundled in 2 shawls, breathing heavy but smiling. "You came back," she rasped.
"Thought you might. They never do, you know, but I had a feeling."
Jeremiah handed her the groceries.
"You shouldn't have to wait alone."
Maya peeked out from behind the doorframe, her expression unreadable.
"Hi, Mr. Jeremiah." Just Jeremiah," he said, setting the shoes down. "I got you something. Hope they fit."
She knelt down by the shoes, eyes widening as she traced a finger over the laces.
"They're pink." "I heard that's the right answer." Miss Thelma laughed softly, then wheezed. She waved them in. The house was small but spotless.
Framed photos lined the wall, most faded with time. One showed a teenage boy, Maya's father, with the same steady eyes, arms crossed proudly in front of a school sign. "He was 12 when you met him," Thelma said. "He told me what you did that day meant everything, even if it was just a shoelace."
Jeremiah nodded.
It wasn't just the shoelace. They sat in silence for a while, the old woman sipping tea with shaky hands. Maya placed the shoes next to her bed, still untouched, as if too sacred to try on just yet. Warren stood outside, leaning on the car, arms folded.
He didn't need to come in.
He understood this was not about charity. It was about something being repaired.
Miss Thelma coughed hard again, the sound echoing through the tiny space. Jeremiah's brow creased. "Have you seen a doctor recently?"
She shook her head.
"No insurance. I take what I can from the clinic, but mostly I pray.
Besides," she glanced toward Maya.
"Can't afford to leave her alone just yet." He looked toward Maya.
She was now drawing with a dull crayon on the back of a cereal box, humming faintly to herself. The sound was fragile, like a song trying not to disappear. When they left, Maya walked them to the gate.
"You don't have to come again," she said. "Most people don't. After the first visit, they think they've done enough." Jeremiah lowered to her eye level. "Do I look like most people to you?"
She studied him.
"No. You look like someone who's still figuring it out." He smiled. "So, are you back in the car?" Warren didn't start the engine right away. "You okay?"
Jeremiah stared at his hands.
"I think I owe that little girl more than a ride."
"To her?" Warren asked. "To her, to her father, to the version of me that left the orphanage, thinking no one would come back." They pulled away, rolling slowly past the row of tired houses and corner boys. Maya stood on the porch, waving with one hand, the other cradling her new shoes like treasure. Later that day, Jeremiah sat through a board meeting at Carter Global. Numbers were up, expansion in Europe was ahead of schedule, and the legal team had updates on several pending mergers. He didn't hear a word. When the CFO asked about the foundation's annual gala, Jeremiah simply said, "Postpone it."
Postpone? The man blinked. It's in 3 weeks, then cancel it. I have a different priority. As the room erupted in murmurs, Jeremiah stood. I'll be in the Bronx tomorrow. Don't wait up. That night, he called his attorney. Find out what it takes to set up guardianship. Quietly, "Sir," the man asked, voice hesitant, "I'm not taking her away. I don't want her to feel alone again. Not for one more day." And across the city, in a room that smelled faintly of lavender and dust, Maya sat on the floor, her new shoes beside her, drawing another picture. This one was of a man in a suit kneeling down not to tie a shoelace but to simply hold a little girl's hand. The following Saturday morning, the sky was overcast, casting a pale gray wash over the Bronx as Jeremiah Carter stepped out of the car with a brown paper bag tucked under his arm. Warren didn't follow. Instead, he stayed behind the wheel, watching his boss walk through the peeling iron gate of 28 Elderberry Street with the air of someone stepping into sacred ground. Maya opened the door before he could knock. Her braids were freshly tied with bright ribbons. She wore the new sneakers, a size too big, the laces still vivid against the scuffed floorboards behind her. "You remembered," she said, as if surprised. "I said I'd come back." She nodded and stepped aside. The apartment smelled like oatmeal and chamomile. Jeremiah handed the bag to Miss Thelma, who was bundled in a thick cardigan despite the spring chill. "I brought something," he said. She opened it slowly. Inside was a tin of honey lemon drops, a heating pad, and a stack of paperbacks, classic novels with large print. "Well, now," she whispered, setting the books down gently like heirlooms. "A man who brings stories is rarer than one who brings flowers." Jeremiah looked around the room again. There was something comforting about its stillness. The furniture was old, but cared for. The wallpaper peeled in spots, but had once been cheerful. A pale sunflower print faded to near ivory. On one wall hung the same photograph he had seen before. Himself, decades younger, kneeling beside a boy with wide eyes and untied shoes. Only now he noticed something different. Just below the frame, tucked behind a small wooden cross, was another photo. This one in black and white, folded at the edges. He stepped closer. The same boy, older now, stood in a graduation robe, arms around a woman and a small girl who must have been a baby at the time. Maya and the boy, her father, had his hand placed protectively on her head just as Jeremiah had placed his own on that boy's shoulder years ago. "That's him," Miss Thelma said quietly from behind. "Jason, my son, your picture, your kindness the day he held on to it, said it showed him he mattered, made him want to matter for someone else." Jeremiah stared at the photo. "I didn't know." "No," she said gently. "But you never forgot how to kneel. That matters." He turned and looked toward the kitchen where Maya poured orange juice into 2 mismatched glasses, humming softly. "She still thinks he might come back," Thelma added. "Even though we both know better." Jeremiah sat beside the old woman. "How long has it been?" 5 years. He was working nights, construction site. Got caught in the wrong place. Wrong time. Never made it home. Police reports said gang crossfire, but you know how they write those things. He nodded. He did know. Statistics buried under bureaucratic jargon, names reduced to case numbers, forgotten men, and forgotten girls left behind. Maya returned with the juice, setting one glass in front of him. "This one's got more pulp," she said, smiling shyly. "I wasn't sure what kind you liked." Jeremiah took it. "More pulp is fine. Means it's real." They sat in silence a moment, sipping, the old floor creaking beneath them like an old friend shifting in sleep. "Do you remember him?" he asked her gently. She shrugged. "Bits and pieces. His cologne. The way he said my name. Sometimes I think I remember his laugh, but it might be Mom's voice in my head.
He wanted to reach out, place a hand over hers, but something held him back. Not fear, but reverence. As if touching her might interrupt something holy. After a while, he asked, "What do you like to do, Maya, when you're not taking care of grown-ups?" She tilted her head, thoughtful. "I draw and read comics and I make up stories in my head about heroes. Real heroes. No capes. The kind who fix things quietly." He smiled. "Those are the best kind." Before he left, she ran to her room and came back with a folded piece of paper. "I drew something for you." He opened it. A stick figure man in a suit kneeling next to a little girl holding out a sneaker. Above them, a caption, "Real heroes kneel down." Jeremiah looked at her, eyes suddenly burning. "Thank you, Maya. I'll keep this." As they walked back to the car, Thelma followed him to the gate, leaning lightly on her cane. "You're not just visiting, are you?" she asked. He shook his head. "No, ma'am. I think I've been heading here for a long time." "Then I hope you know," she said with a nod. "Sometimes we don't choose the people we're meant to save. Sometimes they choose us." Jeremiah got in the car. Warren started the engine but didn't say a word. He didn't need to. Jeremiah placed the drawing on his lap, staring at it as the car eased back into the traffic. "Schedule a meeting," he said finally. "Where to?" "Family court," Jeremiah replied. "And after that, I want you to start pulling names, black-owned medical clinics in the area. We're going to fund the ones that been forgotten." Warren nodded slowly, eyes forward. "Yes, sir." Behind them, the little house faded into the blur of the rear-view mirror, but the girl on the porch, her hand raised, waving in the gray light, stayed in Jeremiah's sight long after they turned the corner. The next morning, Jeremiah Carter sat alone in his penthouse library. Maya's drawing spread across the polished mahogany desk. Light spilled in through the wide windows, but it felt like he was still standing in that small Bronx living room in front of the photograph of a boy he once helped and the child that boy left behind. He didn't know what startled him more, the loop of history, or the realization that someone had once looked up to him. His intercom buzzed. "Mr. Carter," his assistant's voice echoed. "The legal team is on line 1. They've drawn up preliminary guardianship inquiries as requested." Jeremiah leaned back in the chair, rubbing his temples. He hadn't told anyone why. It wasn't something he could explain in bullet points or corporate language. It was something he felt in his chest, a tether that had pulled taut across decades. He picked up the phone. "Have them send everything over. I'll review it myself." That afternoon, he returned to Elderberry Street without the car. He took the subway. It was the first time in over 20 years he'd ridden it alone. The sounds, the smells, the heat, it grounded him in a way nothing else could. He passed vendors selling fruit on crates, teenagers bouncing basketballs, older men playing dominoes on sidewalks. No one looked at him twice. Here in this neighborhood, he wasn't a billionaire. He was just a man. At the house, Maya answered the door again, her face lighting up with a mix of surprise and something else. "Trust. You came back again. I said I would." She stepped aside. This time he noticed the smell of lavender, faint but persistent. Miss Thelma sat at the kitchen table, her breathing shallow. "I brought a friend," Jeremiah said. A moment later, a woman in a white coat entered behind him. Dr. Ree, a family physician he'd worked with through his foundation. "She's going to check on you, Miss Thelma." "No charges, just a house call." Thelma opened her mouth to protest, but closed it with a soft nod. "A man who brings books and doctors." "What are you building here, Jeremiah?" "Hope," he answered simply. While Dr. Ree examined Thelma, Jeremiah sat with Maya on the porch. She was reading aloud from a comic, her voice stumbling occasionally on the big words. "Want help?" he asked. She shook her head. "I like figuring it out myself. Your dad used to say the same thing." She looked up at him, eyes narrowing.
Did you really know him? I met him once. Just once. I didn't even know his name, but I never forgot his face. Maya tucked her knees under her chin. Mom said he was brave, but I think she just didn't want me to feel sad. Bravery, Jeremiah said, isn't about not being scared. It's about choosing to stand anyway. Maya considered that. Are you brave? I'm learning.
Inside, Dr. Ree stepped out. She's stable for now, but her lungs are weak. She'll need a follow-up and some prescriptions, and someone needs to be nearby. I'll take care of it, Jeremiah said. That evening, he stayed for dinner. They had rice and beans, cornbread, and sweet tea. The meal was humble, but the conversation was rich. Thelma told stories of her youth, of raising Jason alone, of nights she worked 2 shifts just to keep the lights on. Maya laughed when Thelma described how Jason once tried to fry an egg using only a flashlight and determination. Jeremiah laughed, genuine laughter, full and unfamiliar. Before he left, Maya pulled something from her drawer. A small shoebox filled with drawings, most of them superheroes with kind eyes and worn shoes. This one's you, she said, holding up a picture of a man in a long coat standing in front of a school. He's not a hero because he fights. He's a hero because he listens. He took it carefully, folding it and placing it in his coat pocket. Thank you, Maya. As he stepped outside, Warren was waiting at the curb, leaning on the hood of the Rolls. Jeremiah gave him a look, took the train down. Oh, I know, Warren replied. But you'll need a ride back. I figured you'd want to reflect in leather, not plastic. They laughed. On the drive home, Jeremiah spoke. Warren, I want to do something permanent, not just the clinics. I want a youth center. In Jason's name, Carter Youth Center, Warren mused. No, Jeremiah said. Johnson Youth Center. It belongs to them. The next day, the headlines began to ripple. Billionaire Carter files for guardianship of local child. Media trucks appeared on Elderberry Street. Microphones shoved at Thelma's door. Strangers asking Maya if she'd been adopted. Jeremiah immediately arranged a PR shield. Moved Maya and Thelma into a temporary apartment on the Upper West Side, quiet, safe, and close to medical care. But in private, he worried not about public opinion, about failing again, about being too late. That night, Maya stood at the window of the new apartment, looking out over the skyline. Why'd you bring us here? She asked. Because sometimes we don't get to choose where we're born. But we can choose where we heal, she looked at him. Are you going to leave, too? Jeremiah crouched down, meeting her eye level. Never, he said. Not again. By Monday morning, Jeremiah Carter's name was no longer just a headline about wealth and business. It was on every talk show, every local news station, every radio program that dared to explore the question, why would a billionaire want to become the guardian of a little black girl from the Bronx? In the elevator to his office, Jeremiah stood between 2 executives who didn't realize he had stepped in behind them. Have you seen the latest piece in the Post? One whispered. They're calling it compassion PR move to clean up after the offshore funding leaks. Or maybe he's just finally cracked, the other muttered, taking in street kids now. Jeremiah said nothing. When the elevator doors opened, he walked past them without so much as a glance. Inside his office, his assistant looked up with wide eyes. They're waiting for you in the boardroom. The CFO is concerned. I'm sure he is, Jeremiah said calmly. He adjusted his cuffs, stepped into the meeting room, and faced 12 men and women in tailored suits. The CFO rose. Jeremiah, we've all seen the news. You've essentially hijacked our foundation's focus. What are we doing here? Jeremiah didn't sit. What we're doing is what the foundation was created to do. Helping people who need it. Not as a photo op. Not for tax breaks, but because we can. A younger board member spoke up, uncertain. But why this girl? Jeremiah stared at him. Because her father was a boy I met once. Because I tied his shoe and told him he mattered. And 25 years later, his daughter asked me if she could walk home with me because no one else came.
If that makes you uncomfortable, maybe you're in the wrong room. The silence that followed was thick.
Then the chairman, older and quieter than the rest, nodded slowly.
You have my vote of confidence. Let the media say what they will. We know who you are. Jeremiah gave a grateful nod and left.
As he walked out, his assistant handed him a folder.
There's a letter from Maya.
He opened it in the privacy of his office, a folded page with another drawing. This time, the man in the suit was holding an umbrella over a girl in the rain, beneath it written in uneven print.
Thank you for standing still when the rain came. That evening, he brought paper and crayons to the new apartment. Maya greeted him with a grin and a messy braid.
She had set up a tiny studio in the corner of the living room, just a low table and some cushions. I made another story, she said.
Want to see?
He sat beside her, watching as she laid out pages like a storyboard. Her superheroes weren't muscle-bound.
They were nurses, janitors, bus drivers.
On one page, a tired man in a suit knelt to pick up spilled groceries. The next, a woman in scrubs gave her last sandwich to a hungry child.
You've got a good eye, he said. You see people. Maya shrugged. I see what they do when no one's looking. That's when it matters most. Later, while Thelma rested in her room, Maya and Jeremiah stood by the balcony. Lights twinkled across the skyline.
Maya turned toward him, her voice softer.
Do you think my dad would like me? Jeremiah's heart paused. He'd be proud of you, Maya.
So proud.
She nodded but didn't look away from the view. Sometimes I wish I could remember him better.
I try to make up memories, but they feel like stories I'm telling myself.
It's okay to not remember everything. Sometimes the people we miss the most are the ones who show up in how we treat others. Maya smiled faintly. Like you? He hesitated. I'm trying.
They spent the rest of the evening folding paper planes out of colored sheets.
Maya wrote tiny messages inside each one. Be kind. You matter. I see you.
They flew them off the balcony, watching them drift like slow birds through the night air.
Do you think anyone will find them? She asked.
Someone will, Jeremiah replied.
The right person always does.
The next morning, a man sweeping the sidewalk blocks away found one.
He opened the fold and read. I see you.
He looked up at the sky, puzzled, then smiled. It was the first time he'd smiled in days. At the Foundation's headquarters, the first phase of the Johnson Youth Center was underway.
Jeremiah called architects, educators, social workers. No marble lobbies, he said. Just warmth, access, and safety.
Meanwhile, gossip circled faster.
Blogs questioned his motives. Anonymous sources hinted at mental decline. Who spends their millions on one girl when they could buy islands?
But in the Bronx, the story was different. Locals spoke of a man who returned every Saturday. A man who listened, who knelt down and tied a child's shoelace without cameras or press. One afternoon, while Jeremiah and Maya sat in the lobby of her new school, enrolling her for the spring term, a teacher walked by, stared, then whispered, "Is that?"
Mia whispered back, "That's my friend." Later that day, as they walked home, Mia stopped suddenly. "Mr. Jeremiah?" "Yes." "If I ever forget all this, will you remind me?" He looked at her, moved beyond words. "Always."
And with that, they continued walking, the city unfolding around them, not as a place of noise and steel, but as a story still being written. One step, one shoelace, one quiet echo at a time. The morning air was crisp. As Mia stepped into the lobby of her new school, a soft lavender scarf tucked around her neck. Jeremiah walked beside her, nodding politely at the receptionist as they signed in. The hallway buzzed with students, lockers slamming shut, the hum of everyday life moving with purpose. But to Maya, it still felt like walking into a strange new world, one where she didn't quite know the rules. Jeremiah knelt beside her. "You've got this," he said, adjusting the strap of her backpack.
You've already faced bigger things than a spelling test. She grinned. Do you think they'll like me?
I don't care if they do, he said.
What matters is that you stay true to you. She nodded, then gave a small wave as she disappeared down the hall. Jeremiah stood for a moment watching.
Then he turned and walked out, though part of him stayed right there, just outside room 204, where Mia's story would continue to unfold without him for the next 8 hours.
Back at the office, trouble waited. His assistant met him at the door, eyes uneasy.
Sir, there's been a development. She handed him a thin file. Jeremiah opened it and found a tabloid article with the headline, Guardianship for Gain, Billionaire Tied to Real Estate Deal Near Youth Center.
Jeremiah's jaw tightened. They're claiming you're pushing the Johnson Youth Center because of land value manipulation, she explained. It's nonsense.
I know, but it's catching fire. He closed the folder.
Schedule a press conference today.
No scripts, no PR filters.
I'll say it myself.
That afternoon, standing at the podium outside Carter Global, Jeremiah looked into the sea of cameras.
Flashbulbs popped like distant lightning. He didn't flinch.
I didn't take guardianship of Maya Johnson for publicity, he began.
And I certainly didn't do it to profit.
I did it because I was once a boy like her father left waiting on a sidewalk for someone who never came. I made a promise to myself that if I ever had the power to show up for someone, I would, and I'm keeping that promise. He paused, letting the silence settle.
Believe what you want.
But know this, I will not be bullied into abandoning a child who's already lost too much. He stepped back, ignoring shouted questions, and walked off.
The reaction was mixed. Some applauded, others doubled down.
But for Maya, sitting cross-legged on her new bed that evening, none of that mattered. What mattered was the small television showing Jeremiah standing alone on that podium, face calm, voice steady. She turned to Thelma, who nodded proudly.
He's not just standing for you, baby. He's standing for all of us.
Meanwhile, the whispers at school had begun.
Isn't that the charity kid? Someone muttered. She's with that rich guy, right? Some kind of scam. At first, Maya ignored it. She focused on her art on the books Jeremiah brought her every week.
But by Friday, someone slipped a note into her locker.
It read, "How much does he pay you to act like his daughter?"
She crumpled it up, face burning, but said nothing, not even to Jeremiah when he picked her up that afternoon.
You okay? He asked. Just tired. They wrote in silence. That night, Maya didn't draw. She didn't read.
She stared out the window, wondering if maybe kindness really did come with a price. The next morning, while Jeremiah met with city officials about the center, Maya stayed back with Thelma, but she didn't sit inside. She wandered to the nearby park, sat on the swing, and listened to the creak of chains in the wind. She didn't hear the boys approach until one kicked the dirt near her feet.
Hey, charity case, one sneered. He buying you toys now? Got your own floor in his mansion yet? Maya stood slowly. Leave me alone.
Another one smirked.
Or what? You'll cry to your sugar daddy?
Before she could respond, a voice cut through the air.
Back off.
Warren stood a few feet away, arms crossed, face like thunder. The boys mumbled, shuffled, and disappeared down the path. He walked over, gently placing a hand on the swing's chain.
You don't owe anyone an explanation, Maya. People fear what they don't understand.
Maya looked up at him, her eyes glassy.
Why are they so mean?
Because deep down they know you've got something they lost a long time ago.
Hope. Later that evening, she finally told Jeremiah everything.
The note, the names, the insults. He listened without interrupting.
When she finished, she asked, "Do you think maybe this is all a mistake?"
Jeremiah's voice was quiet but firm. The only mistake would be walking away from something this important.
But why does it hurt? Because you care. And that's a strength, Maya, not a weakness.
He reached into his coat and pulled out a small leather-bound book. This was your father's.
Miss Thelma kept it. He wrote poems. Did you know that? Maya shook her head. Jeremiah opened the book and read aloud.
Even when I am small, I will stand like I am tall.
For the world does not need more giants. It needs the brave to be defiant.
Maya smiled through her tears.
He wrote that. He did. And now you do the same. You stand. And she did. That night she drew again.
This time the page showed a girl standing on a mountain holding a flag that simply read, "I belong here."
Jeremiah taped it on the fridge.
Let them see it, he said.
Let the world know you're not going anywhere.
By the time spring rain washed the last salt of winter from the sidewalks, Maya's world had started to stretch.
She walked to school now without holding Jeremiah's hand.
Though she always glanced back once to see if he was watching. He usually was, standing at the corner, coat collar turned up, giving her a nod that said, "I see you.
Keep going." Inside, she was adjusting.
Some teachers had already grown protective of her, others wary of the attention. But Maya stayed steady. She drew every day during recess, pages filled with quiet heroes, caretakers, and small acts of bravery.
Her confidence bloomed in soft, subtle ways. But just as the weather warmed, a new storm crept in. It began with a knock on Thelma's apartment door late one Friday evening. Jeremiah opened it, surprised to see a sharply dressed woman with a hard-set jaw and a clipboard.
"Mr. Carter," she said.
"My name is Valerie Kane. I'm with the Department of Child Welfare." Jeremiah's eyes narrowed slightly. "This isn't a scheduled visit." "No, sir. It's in response to a formal petition filed this morning. Someone's contesting your guardianship.
They claim familial rights." Behind him, Thelma coughed. Maya peeked out from the hallway, her fingers curled around the edge of the wall.
"Who?" Jeremiah asked, voice low. Valerie handed him a sheet. "A woman named Cassandra Lee. She says she's Maya's biological aunt. Claims she wasn't informed." Jeremiah stood still for a moment.
Then with careful control, he said, "We'll cooperate fully, but Maya stays here tonight."
"She's safe here." Valerie nodded once. "We'll review her case Monday morning. Please have your attorney present." When the door shut, Jeremiah turned to Thelma.
She was pale, hands trembling around her tea.
"She doesn't want Maya," Thelma whispered. "Cassandra left when Jason was 17. Ran off to Florida chasing some record deal. Didn't even show up to his funeral. But now she's back," Jeremiah muttered.
"And she's found a lawyer."
Maya came into the room, eyes searching. "Am I going somewhere?" Jeremiah dropped to one knee. "Not unless you want to."
She shook her head quickly, then stepped closer.
"What if they don't care what I want?"
"They will," he said.
"Because I won't let them forget." That night, sleep eluded all of them. Jeremiah sat by the window, staring at the city lights as if they might blink out any second. In his hand, he still held Maya's drawing from days earlier, the mountain, the flag, the words, "I belong here."
At sunrise, he called his lawyer, a sharp but sincere woman named Dana Mendes. She arrived within hours, her briefcase packed with folders and fire.
"Cassandra has no real relationship with the child," Dana said. "But she's banking on public pressure.
The story's grown too big.
If they can paint this as an act of ego or manipulation, it's not."
Jeremiah said, "I know that, but we need to prove that Maya's best interests are here with you."
"That means testimony from teachers, neighbors, from her."
She shouldn't have to carry that," Jeremiah said softly. "She already is, but we'll shield her as best we can." At school, the whispers came back like a second wave.
"She's getting taken away. Did you hear?
The billionaire's in trouble." Maya tried to keep her head down, but the sting reached her cheeks and settled behind her eyes. That afternoon, her art teacher, Mrs. Cole, knelt beside her desk and spoke quietly.
"Maya, do you want to draw something for yourself today? Something that doesn't have to prove anything to anyone." Maya nodded.
What she drew was simply a house, not big, not grand, but with 3 figures inside, one sitting at a window with a book, one cooking in the kitchen, and one standing at the door, watching the street with quiet eyes.
Underneath, she wrote, "Love isn't DNA, it's who stays."
Mrs. Cole folded the drawing and said nothing. The next morning, she hand-delivered it to Jeremiah with a note.
She knows what home is. Monday arrived with gray clouds and courtroom silence.
The room was sterile, wood, high ceilings, and faces that did not know Maya. Cassandra sat across the aisle in a sleek blouse, flanked by her lawyer, all lip gloss and carefully chosen grief. Jeremiah sat beside Dana, his hand clenched beneath the table. When the judge entered, everyone rose.
Testimony began. Miss Thelma spoke, voice trembling but strong. Jeremiah has been the only constant Mia's had.
He brings doctors, books, even silence when she needs it.
Mrs. Cole spoke next, holding up Mia's drawing.
She doesn't need another relative who showed up for the spotlight. She needs someone who's already there when the lights go off. Then Mia herself was called. Jeremiah looked at her, worry flickering across his face, but Mia stood, walked to the front, and climbed onto the seat with quiet grace. The judge smiled gently.
"Do you know why you're here today, Maya?"
"Yes," she said. "They want to know where I belong."
"And where do you think that is?"
She took a breath, with the people who stayed. There was silence in the room, not heavy, just full, like everyone had just heard something they didn't expect.
Maya continued, "Mr. Jeremiah didn't promise me anything big, but he keeps showing up. Even when people whisper.
Even when it hurts, he's home." The judge nodded slowly.
"Thank you, Maya." An hour later, the decision was read.
The guardianship would remain in Jeremiah Carter's care. As they left the courthouse, reporters swarmed, but Mia didn't hide.
She walked beside Jeremiah, holding his hand, chin up.
That evening, back at the apartment, Jeremiah sat on the couch while Maya curled beside him, head on his shoulder. "You did good today," he whispered.
"So did you." He smiled. "Think we've earned pizza tonight?" "With extra cheese, extra everything," he said.
And as they laughed, the city outside continued on, unaware that in one small apartment, a storm had passed, and the roots of something permanent had taken hold.
Summer crept into the city slowly, like it didn't want to startle anyone.
Trees along the Upper West Side bloomed lazily, and school let out with the chaotic glee of children loosed from structure.
But for Maya, the season wasn't just about sunshine.
It was about building safety, memory, and the idea that she could belong to something that didn't vanish.
Jeremiah had taken a new routine.
Each morning, he'd walk her to a nearby community art program before heading downtown to oversee progress on the Johnson Youth Center.
He was there nearly every day now, ditching suits for jeans and work boots, talking with contractors, shaking hands with social workers, listening.
He wanted the center to breathe, not just stand. He wanted hallways that echoed with laughter, walls that held stories, classrooms filled with tools, not just textbooks.
One Tuesday afternoon, Maya joined him for the first time at the site. It wasn't much to look at yet. Scaffolding, exposed brick, cement mixers groaning like tired giants. But Mia's eyes lit up. "Is this it?" she asked. Jeremiah smiled. "It's going to be."
He handed her a hard hat.
"Come on. Want to see something special?" He led her toward a central room.
It was framed, not yet finished, but had large window cutouts on either side. "This will be the art space," he said. "Natural light, wall-to-wall drawing tables, every kind of supply for kids who feel like they don't have a voice yet."
Maya looked around, imagining it alive with colors, papers, stories.
"I like it," she whispered.
He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded envelope.
"What's that?" she asked.
"Something I've been waiting to give you," he said. She opened it.
Inside was a document and official change.
Her name legally now. Maya Elizabeth Carter Johnson. She blinked. "That's my name."
"It's yours if you want it," Jeremiah said softly.
"You don't have to give up who you are." But you're also part of something new now. Something that won't leave. Her eyes glistened. You really want me to be part of you? I already feel like I am, he said.
She threw her arms around his waist, the hard hat toppling off her head. He held her, letting the moment stitch something wordless into the marrow of both their bones. Later that evening, after pizza slices on paper plates and orange soda sipped from the bottle, Maya pulled out her sketch pad. She began drawing a white building with banners, smiling kids, a garden with a plaque in front.
Jeremiah leaned over. What's that say? Maya smiled.
It says, this place was made from bricks, but it stands on memory.
The next day, the past caught up. Jeremiah received a letter.
No return address, no stamp, just slipped into the slot of the foundation office. Inside was a grainy photo. Him, 20-some, at a long-forgotten protest march. The words on the back were scrawled in shaky pen. You still owe him more than a shoelace. He stared at it. The air around him suddenly colder.
Warren walked in. You all right?
Someone remembers, Jeremiah said, passing him the photo.
Warren studied it. Think it's a threat? It's a reminder. That evening, Jeremiah sat with Thelma.
She was weaker now. Her breaths shorter, but her eyes were sharp as ever. You don't get to forget where you came from, she said.
Even if the world lets you. I haven't, Jeremiah said.
But you buried it, she replied.
He sighed.
There's pain in those memories. There's truth, too, she said. And you can't build anything lasting if you leave truth out of the foundation. He nodded, then gently held her hand.
2 days later, Thelma was taken to the hospital. Pneumonia.
Maya visited daily, sitting quietly beside her bed, drawing while machines hummed and beeped.
One night, Maya brought in a new drawing. It was of a tree, tall, strong, roots deep, and visible.
This is you, she said, showing it to Thelma. Even if you fall asleep forever, the roots stay. Thelma didn't speak that night, but she smiled weakly and reached for Maya's hand. She passed 2 mornings later. Jeremiah found Maya standing at the hospital window watching rainfall in fine slanted lines. I grow up strong, Maya said. Even without her, she was right.
Jeremiah replied.
The funeral was small. Close friends, a pastor who had known Thelma since her youth.
Mia read her poem.
Jeremiah stood behind her silently, hand on her shoulder. Afterward, Mia placed a folded drawing in Thelma's casket. It was the tree again, this time with 2 figures underneath it, sitting on a bench, sharing silence. Weeks passed. The Johnson Youth Center neared completion.
Maya began writing more than she drew.
Jeremiah found her typing on an old laptop one day.
A file opened titled, The Ones Who Stay. What's that? He asked.
Our story, she said. But also, not just ours, everyone's.
The ones who didn't leave, the ones who showed up. He sat beside her.
You're going to change people with that, he said. She smiled, not pridefully, but like someone who had finally seen the path forward.
Maybe, she said. Or maybe I'll just remind them they still can.
That night, she wrote a single line in bold across the first page. Love is not perfect, but it returns.
It holds on, and it stays.
The first rainstorm of July came with thunder that rolled like distant drums and lightning that illuminated the unfinished corridors of the Johnson Youth Center. Jeremiah stood alone in what would become the library, shelves not yet built, but blueprints taped to the walls. Outside, the storm splashed against the glass like a memory trying to claw its way back. Construction had been halted for the weekend, but Jeremiah walked the empty structure like a caretaker wandering his house at night, checking that every window was still latched, every shadow still where he left it. The silence inside was a balm and a weight. In the west wing, past where the music room would be, a small square hole in the wall caught his eye.
It hadn't been there last week.
He stepped closer, reached in, and pulled out an envelope, sealed with a thin red string. On the front, in faded handwriting, it read, "For the one who stayed."
Jeremiah turned the envelope over slowly. Inside, a single letter, creased, careful. It began with no greeting, just a date. The 12th of October, 2001.
If you're reading this, it means the center finally made it past the blueprint.
It means someone believed enough to build it. I hope it's you, Jeremiah. I always hoped it would be. The handwriting was familiar, painfully so.
Back then, we were just kids shouting into a storm, protesting, marching, getting arrested, and wondering if anything would ever change.
You kept saying we needed to build, not just break. I didn't listen. I wanted the quick fight.
You played the long game.
You always did.
If you found this, it means I didn't make it as far as you did.
Maybe I got tired. Maybe I stopped believing. But if this building stands, I want to believe you turned the anger into action.
I want to believe you built something better than we ever dreamed.
It was signed. Miles. Jeremiah's breath caught.
Miles had been his closest friend at Howard.
Brilliant, reckless, loud, a poet with fists.
They'd stood on picket lines together, gotten pepper sprayed together, laughed under cracked ceilings while planning protests by candlelight. But they'd gone separate ways, Miles into community organizing in Detroit, Jeremiah into finance, building wealth, not just to own, but to one day give. He had searched for Miles more than once over the years, but the trail had gone cold. Now here was his voice again, buried in brick and hope.
Jeremiah pressed the letter to his chest, eyes shut.
Later that night, back at the apartment, he placed the letter on the dining table. Maya was curled up on the couch, reading the bluest eye with a furrowed brow and a highlighter in hand. "Ever heard of someone named Miles Henderson?" he asked her gently.
She looked up. "That name's on a mural at the center." Jeremiah nodded.
He helped imagine that place before it ever had walls.
"We lost touch.
But today, I found a letter he left inside the building itself.
Like he knew someday it would reach me." Maya sat up, curious. "What did it say?"
He passed the letter to her. She read it silently, then placed her hand on it.
"That's like the past handing you a torch." Jeremiah smiled. "Exactly."
She leaned back. "I think I'd like to write something too to leave behind for whoever comes next."
"You should."
2 days later, Maya taped her own envelope inside the newly finished art room behind a panel that would later be painted over.
"Dear kid," it began.
"If you're reading this, then the world must still be loud and maybe a little lonely.
But this place was built by people who stayed, so stay, okay? We need more of us."
The center's opening was scheduled for the 3rd of August.
Invitations were sent. Press lined up. Sponsors signed checks. But Jeremiah didn't care about that.
He cared that Maya would cut the ribbon. He cared that Thelma's name was etched into the wall beside Jason's under a quote Mia had chosen.
"Home is where someone still waits for you even when you're late." That week, Warren brought Jeremiah a quiet warning.
"There's a rumor," he said. "Some of the board members at Carter Global are talking exit, saying your emotional projects are jeopardizing the company's core."
Jeremiah sipped his coffee. "Let them talk." They might do more than talk."
"Then they'll make room for people who still remember what the company stands for."
Warren hesitated. "And if they try to push you out," Jeremiah's voice was calm. "Steel beneath water."
"Then I'll walk out first, but not before the doors open on that center." The grand opening came with sun, music, and something sacred in the air. Local children arrived in handmade t-shirts that read, "I belong here."
Teachers wept.
Elders stood still with eyes closed as if breathing in a piece of their youth returned to them. Maya stood at the podium, small but sure. "This place isn't magic," she said. "It doesn't fix everything, but it helps you remember you matter, and sometimes that's all you need to start."
She cut the ribbon and the building came alive.
Later that night, as they locked up, Jeremiah looked out from the library's wide windows.
"Maya," he said, "what do you think we should build next?"
She looked at him, thoughtful.
"Maybe nothing." He raised an eyebrow. She smiled. Maybe now we just make sure this one doesn't fall.
He nodded, pride swelling.
You're right, and together they turned out the light,
room by room, each click of the switch sealing a promise kept and a future still waiting to unfold. August melted into September, and with the start of the school year,
Maya carried more than notebooks in her backpack.
She carried the weight of legacy. Every time she stepped through the doors of the Johnson Youth Center after class, she saw the drawings on the walls from children like her. She saw her father's name engraved beneath the front steps. And in every corner of that building, she felt the echo of a promise that had finally been kept. But outside those walls, the world remained unpredictable.
On a quiet Thursday morning, while Jeremiah reviewed grant proposals in his office above the Foundation's cafe, Warren stormed in. No knock, no hesitation. They're calling an emergency board vote, he said. Today, they want to remove you as CEO. Jeremiah didn't look up. Let them. You say that like you won't bleed.
Jeremiah folded his reading glasses and leaned back. I've already done the work I came here to do. If they want the title, they can have it, but they can't have the story.
Warren paused. It's not just about you.
If they force you out, they'll likely slash funding to the youth center. They'll say it's a misallocation of resources.
You think they care about after-school art programs or tutoring sessions for kids with no Wi-Fi? Jeremiah stood.
Then we fight quietly, but we fight. The board meeting was a theater of cold smiles and careful words. The CFO cited budget strains. Another member raised questions about distractions from core vision. They used phrases like strategic realignment and fiduciary duty.
But when it came time to vote, Jeremiah asked for the floor.
I started this company with 2 folding chairs and a phone that barely worked, he said.
I've been in those trenches chasing clients one sandwich at a time, and everything we built.
Everything was supposed to create something bigger than wealth. That's why the foundation exists. That's why the youth center exists.
He looked around the room. You want to take my chair? Fine, but ask yourselves, what do you want this company to stand for after I'm gone? The vote passed by a slim margin. Jeremiah Carter, founder and CEO, was officially out.
The press devoured it.
Philanthropy versus profit. Carter ousted by his own board. But Maya didn't ask for details. She didn't need them.
That night, she found him on the rooftop of their building staring at the skyline, a simple mug of tea in his hands.
You okay? She asked. He nodded. They can take the title. They can't take what we've built. Will it close?
No, he said firmly.
I already protected it. Transferred ownership to an independent nonprofit last month. They can't touch it now.
She smiled, small and quiet.
Good. In the days that followed, the Johnson Youth Center grew louder with life. Kids flooded in after school.
Volunteers came from nearby colleges.
A retired chef offered cooking classes on weekends.
And Maya, now a quiet fixture, helped younger kids draw their first comics.
Taught them how to use metaphors like storm in a teacup or heart like a backpack.
But change still nipped at their heels.
Cassandra returned, not in person, but through lawyers.
She filed a second suit, this time not for guardianship, but for access. She claimed Maya deserved to know her real family. Claimed that keeping her away was emotional kidnapping. And worst of all, she was backed by an influencer who saw the drama as content gold.
Jeremiah read the paperwork in silence.
Maya, sitting across the kitchen table, watched his face.
Do I have to see her? She asked. Legally, not yet, he said. But we'll need to go to court again, and it might get messy. Mia looked at the cup in her hands. She's not family to me. Not like you. Not like Miss Thelma. I know, Jeremiah said. But this isn't about truth.
It's about proving stability, continuity, and intention.
Maya nodded slowly. Then we prove it. They prepared together. Dana returned sharper than ever.
They gathered statements from counselors, teachers, even the local librarian who'd watched Maya evolve from shy reader to mentor in the making. But what struck Dana most was what Mia brought her, pages from her own journal.
"These are my thoughts," Mia said.
"Not stories, not drawings, just the things I keep." The court date loomed. The morning it arrived, Maya wore a deep blue dress and her father's old jacket, now altered to fit her small frame.
Jeremiah took her hand before they walked into the courthouse.
"No matter what happens in there," he said, "you are loved.
You are home."
Inside, the judge was stern but fair. Cassandra's lawyer made their points with polish and performative concern.
Maya listened without flinching.
Then it was her turn. She stood before the court. 17 now, but speaking with the gravity of someone twice that age.
"I am not property," she said.
"I'm not a prize to be claimed because someone didn't like being left out.
I know who's raised me. I know who's shown up. You don't get to disappear and then return when the cameras are on."
She paused, lifted a small notebook, and read.
"Home is where I wake up without fear. Family is who teaches me that my voice matters.
And love is who stays when the storm comes."
Silence filled the room like fog.
The judge looked over her glasses.
"Thank you, Miss Carter Johnson."
The ruling came 3 days later.
Cassandra's motion was denied. No further access was granted.
Jeremiah and Maya sat on a bench outside the courthouse. She leaned her head against his shoulder.
"What now?" she asked.
"Now," he said, "we keep building, one truth at a time." And above them, the city stretched onward, messy, unforgiving, beautiful. But for once, the noise didn't sound like chaos.
It sounded like a beginning.
The leaves had started to turn by mid-October, coloring the sidewalks of Harlem in a carpet of amber and crimson.
Autumn crept in like a gentle reminder that even endings had beauty. For Maya, it meant hoodies instead of t-shirts.
Long walks with Jeremiah wrapped in wool scarves and the scent of roasted peanuts floating from corner carts. The youth center thrived. What had once been scaffolding was now home to after-school laughter, poetry slams on Wednesday evenings, and the aroma of Miss Rosa's soul food cooking class on Saturdays. Jeremiah, no longer bound by boardrooms or quarterly reports, poured his mornings into mentoring and his afternoons into listening. One Friday, as Maya stapled a student's artwork to a bulletin board shaped like a tree, Warren entered the lobby with a look she hadn't seen before.
Quiet urgency. "Jeremiah around?" he asked.
"He's in the basement," Maya replied. "Trying to fix the water heater."
Warren raised a brow. "Seriously?" "Let's just say he's become very handy," she smiled.
Jeremiah emerged minutes later, sleeves rolled, a wrench still in hand. Warren handed him a thick envelope from a lawyer, anonymous sender.
Jeremiah opened it, brow furrowing with every page.
Then quietly he sat down on the bench beneath the lobby mural, a hand-painted depiction of Maya standing with outstretched arms beneath the words "You belong here."
"What is it?" Mia asked, concerned. He didn't answer immediately.
Then he turned the last page and exhaled. "It's a trust for you from Miles."
Mia blinked. "Miles, from the letter in the wall?" Jeremiah nodded.
"Apparently, he did more than leave words behind.
He left you an inheritance set aside in a foundation he never activated. He must have arranged it decades ago.
Somehow, it survived him."
Warren scanned the papers. "This isn't small.
It's enough to put her through any college, set her up with a start on her own nonprofit, or whatever she dreams of."
Maya sat slowly beside Jeremiah. "But I already have everything I need." Jeremiah placed a hand on hers. "Now you have options."
That's what he wanted for you.
That's what we all wanted. Over the next few days, Maya thought deeply about what to do.
She consulted Warren, her teachers, even Miss Rosa, who simply said, "Sugar, money's just a tool. It's the hammer, not the house." That Sunday, she walked into the center's art room where Jeremiah was organizing supplies. "I know what I want to do," she said. He looked up. "I want to create a fund for kids like me. For the ones who get bounced from couch to couch, who draw on napkins, who carry silence like a second backpack.
I want to call it the Stay Project.
Jeremiah smiled, moved beyond words. That's beautiful. The Stay Project launched quietly but powerfully.
They didn't lead with Jeremiah's name or Maya's past. Instead, they let the mission speak. We help the ones who've stayed.
We help them stay strong. By November, the youth center buzzed with more than children.
Politicians, artists, even former skeptics came to visit. But for Maya, the highlight came on Thanksgiving.
They hosted a dinner in the multi-purpose room. Long tables, folding chairs, plastic tablecloths with leaves drawn by the kids. There were 2 turkeys, 5 trays of mac and cheese, and a gospel choir that sang so loud it shook the light fixtures.
Midway through the evening, a girl around 8 tugged at Mia's sleeve. Are you the girl from the wall? Mia smiled. I think so. The girl nodded. You look like me. You look like someone brave. Mia replied. After dinner, Jeremiah and Mia stepped outside. The night was crisp, and the sound of laughter echoed down the block. You've changed a lot, Jeremiah said. Maya nodded. So have you. You're not afraid anymore. I still get scared, she admitted. But I don't run from it now. He chuckled. That's all any of us can do. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Maya asked, Do you ever miss the boardroom? He laughed. I miss the espresso machine. She grinned. Well, maybe we can raise funds for a fancy one in the staff lounge. That's a worthy cause, he said, placing an arm around her shoulders. December came with its own kind of poetry. Snow arrived early. The center decorated itself with paper snowflakes, painted windows, and the warmth of people who chose to be there not because they were paid, but because they believed. One evening, after the children had gone home and the center stood quiet under flickering hallway lights, Maya found herself in the art room alone. She opened her journal and wrote, I used to think love was something that arrived once and then disappeared. But maybe it's more like the tide. It returns sometimes slowly, but it always finds its way back. She tore out the page and taped it to the wall next to her old drawing of the house with 3 figures. As she stepped back, Jeremiah entered a to-go cup of cocoa in each hand. Thought you might still be here, he said, handing her one. She took it, grateful. What's this? He asked, nodding at the new note. Just something I needed to remind myself, she said. He read it, nodded slowly, and whispered. It's true. Then they sat on the floor, backs against the warm radiator, sipping cocoa, and watching snow fall outside the frosted windows, not speaking, not needing to, because in that moment, everything they had built brick by brick, promise by promise, was still standing, and it was enough. It was a Thursday in late March when the letter arrived sealed with the logo of the National Urban Youth Initiative. Maya almost missed it in the pile of flyers and bills at the front desk of the youth center. She slid it into her backpack without much thought, thinking it was probably another newsletter or grant update. It wasn't. Later that night, curled under a blanket on the living room couch while Jeremiah stirred chili on the stove, she opened it. Jeremiah, she called out. Yeah. She walked into the kitchen, her eyes wide, the letter trembling in her hands. They picked it. He turned off the stove, drying his hands. Picked what? My essay for the National Youth Address. 2 got chosen. I'm going to D.C. I'm going to speak on stage in front of everyone. Jeremiah blinked. The conference. The conference. She repeated. They want me to close the final night. I'm the youngest finalist in the lineup. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Jeremiah pulled her into a hug so fierce, so wordless that all Mia could do was cry into his chest. A month later, Maya stood backstage at the Walter E. Washington Convention Center. Her heart pounded like it was playing jazz inside her rib cage. Dana had flown in for the event along with Warren, Miss Rosa, and even a few kids from the center. Jeremiah stood in the wings, his arms crossed, eyes misty but proud. Ladies and gentlemen, the announcer said, please welcome Maya Carter Johnson.
She stepped onto the stage.
The lights were warm. The crowd was immense. She took a deep breath, then spoke.
I used to believe that belonging was something you had to earn, that if you were small or quiet, or if you didn't come from much, then the world would make you prove yourself over and over again. She paused, the words settling into the silence.
But now I know better. Belonging isn't something you beg for.
It's something we're all born deserving.
And the people who love you, the ones who really see you, they don't wait for you to be perfect. They show up again and again until you believe you're worth showing up for, too.
She told them about her father, about waiting on that curb, about the day she asked a stranger if she could walk home with him. She told them about Thelma, about the courtrooms, the whispers, and the drawing of the house with 3 figures. She ended with a sentence she hadn't written down, but knew by heart. I speak for the ones who stayed, and for the ones who are still waiting for someone to stay. The room erupted in applause.
Afterward, as Jeremiah met her in the green room, Maya looked up with teary eyes. I didn't fall apart. You stood taller than anyone else in the room. She smiled. I think I'm finally starting to believe it. The following weeks were a blur. Interviews, speaking requests, invitations to panels. Maya handled it all with humility.
Always returning home to the youth center to her kids, to her quiet drawings. One afternoon, while sorting through a stack of donation thank you cards, she found a small envelope with no return address.
Inside, a note in slanted script.
You walked home that day and you never stopped walking. I was wrong to leave, but maybe this is my way of staying now. See, she read it 3 times, then folded it quietly and tucked it into her journal.
Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, but something like peace.
Jeremiah, meanwhile, had started writing a book not about finance or legacy, but about what it meant to show up. He called it The Quiet Return.
The center celebrated its 2nd anniversary in June.
This time, the kids planned the event. There were performances, poems, even a dance number choreographed by Maya and 2 girls from her Wednesday group. Jeremiah gave a short speech at the end. I was once a man who thought legacy was built in numbers, he said. But legacy lives in names whispered by children in drawings taped to fridges. In a young woman's voice that echoes long after the stage has emptied, he looked at Maya. Then she changed everything for me. When the applause died down and the guests drifted home, Maya stayed behind to sweep confetti from the floor. She hummed as she worked, a song from her childhood.
Jeremiah watched from the doorway. Ready to head home? He asked.
She turned to him, broom in hand, hair tied back with a red bandana.
Yeah, she said. Let's go.
They walked side by side through the warm night, past the mural on the front of the building. It had changed over time. Now it showed a community interlocked hands, eyes lifted, faces full of stories. At the base of the mural was a new inscription added only last week. Love is not the ones who arrive with fanfare. It is the ones who stay after the lights go out. Maya paused, looking at it, then whispered. I hope it always stays this way.
Jeremiah smiled. Then we keep showing up.
And they walked on, not toward an ending, but a beginning that had been waiting for them all along. The story of Maya and Jeremiah reminds us that true family isn't defined by blood, but by presence, loyalty, and love. It teaches us that showing up consistently, quietly, without expectation of praise, is the greatest act of care. In a world where so many walk away, the ones who stay become the roots of healing. Maya's journey reveals that belonging isn't granted by circumstance, but built through compassion, trust, and the courage to believe we are worthy of being loved. Brought to you by BUP Stories.